Thank you for joining October's Women in Electronics. This month, we are featuring Allison Budvarson with Out of the Box Manufacturing. She is the COO of Out of the Box Manufacturing, and Melissa Femia, who's president and managing member of JANA Diversity Solutions. And today we are talking about career tech. And we are very, very happy to have our two women today, professional women, joining us and to tell us their story, really, is what we want to hear. They've been so kind to join us and tell us a little bit about how they came into electronics, what their interests were, and how they've come to be heads of their company. And we'll talk a little bit more about trends they're seeing in the workplace as well as electronics industry, some trends in the business itself as well. Melissa, would you like to go ahead and start? I'd love to hear a little bit about you and how you got into electronics, maybe where you went to school, etc.
Sure. Okay, so again, good afternoon, everyone. I am chiming in from the Phoenix, Arizona area. Just for the record, I'm actually an Ohio native, and I graduated. I'm not. I have no issues sharing age or any of that jazz. So I graduated quite some time ago in '90 from high school, and when I did, I had no idea what I wanted to do. My parents were pushing me to be a teacher. I'm my father was born in Italy. My mom didn't work, also Italian, and they were just happy to have kids that would go to college at all, and I was to go to the local college, and that was that. And they so I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I honestly came by engineering by a stroke of luck. I had a cousin who I was hanging out with, very close to, and his girlfriend was going to school for industrial engineering. And she talked to me and said, you should consider it because you do well in math. And I didn't even know I was that smart. I know that sounds crazy, but I didn't. And I, again, was on this path of, I liked English, I liked Spanish. I thought, well, maybe I'll do something like that. I mean, I was in a totally different realm than engineering. I didn't really even know what engineers did. I don't come from a family of educated people, right? They, came from Italy, very poor, and we just weren't exposed to professionals. And so after talking to her, I realized, okay, maybe I could do this. I guess I am good at math, and it's not super technical. I mean, I'm not very mechanical even to this day. And so I will tell people all the time that are considering engineering, just because you're not good in one part of engineering doesn't mean you won't be strong in another, and take me to circuit theory and I was fantastic. But again, mechanically, give me a top view, front view, side view. I look all day and I can't find the object. And that's kind of, elementary for a lot of people that are fixed and mechanical type people. So I went ahead and tried engineering, and I went to the local college again, Youngstown State University. They had a good engineering program. It was a commuter college. I still lived at home, and I graduated with my industrial and systems engineering degree, and I did well, and I never would have believed that I would have, to be honest. And then while I was there, towards the end, I think it was my senior year, middle of the year, I got an offer to work as a contract student at General Motors Packard Electric Division. So I was waitressing, and I went ahead and took that job anyhow, even though I made way less money in this contract job, but it was exposure to a company. It was exposure to, a professional engineering atmosphere. So I went ahead and took that job, and then I ended up getting hired by General Motors as a student, and then I finished and graduated in industrial engineering, and like I said, in '94, and I got hired full time. They paid for me to get a master's. I worked with wire harnesses. And so I ended up getting my master's in electrical engineering because it was so applicable to the area that I was working in. And I'll tell you, it took me a little longer because I had to take more undergraduate classes because I switched from industrial to electrical engineering. So that's the nutshell of how I got started, and honestly, just some stroke of luck. So then, since then, I worked just to try and make it quickly, I worked for 10 years with Packard Electric, which was started out as a General Motors company. I worked in process engineering. I worked in product engineering. They moved me to Michigan. I worked in the sales office. And then I ended up meeting people who wanted, through social reasons, who wanted me to come and work for their company, which was a smaller, I'd say mid-sized company. So I, same thing, doing the same exact thing, wire harnesses. And I'm not sure I would have taken that leap because I just, at that time, you know, the family that I had, you joined a company, you worked there forever and you never quit. And so it was a really odd thing for me to even consider quitting. But I did, and I ended up at this other company as a sales director, and then I was director of engineering, same thing, lots of different departments that I ran, was there for over 10 years. And then I took a little time aside and started taking some PhD engineering classes at ASU and thought, well, maybe I'll do that. And while I was there, the classes I took were in engineering education, and I found that, wow, not really that much has changed since I went to school for engineering. They're still telling me that there aren't enough females, there aren't enough, you know, from underrepresented groups in engineering. And they would, you know, present statistics and facts and all that jazz. And I was just so surprised that we weren't as represented so many years later in the marketplace. So, and, you know, I have 3 girls of my own, and between going to ASU and being exposed to the recent numbers and then having my own children and wanting to promote them in the tech fields, just because I found it to be so rewarding, I ended up starting my own business with my partners, and we created, again, a wire harness company called Jana Diversity Solutions. And partly because I was working with so many different customers at the time that were saying, oh, well, if your company were a diverse company or minority company or whatever, we'd have so much more business for you. But, you know, since you're not, we can't give you this business. And so, you know, you listen to that enough and you think, okay, well, maybe we should do this. And maybe that opportunity really is there. So anyhow, that's how I got started. And now I think that Jana Diversity Solutions has been in business since 2017. And we're doing, you know, we're doing well. We're growing every year. It's exciting. It's, you know, I'm very fortunate to have had a strong career for somebody who didn't have a clue what she wanted to do going into her freshman year of college.
Now you have don't you have 2 locations? You said Mexico and Arizona. Is that correct?
I have I have a manufacturing facility in Mexico. It's in Guaymas, Sonora, Mexico, which is maybe about 6.5 hour drive south from Phoenix, just south of Arizona. And then I have an office here in Chandler, Arizona, and that's it. I have really 4 employees, two females, 2 males that work for me here. And then I have about 100 people in Mexico.
Wonderful. That's great. That's great. Thank you very much. Allison, can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. Well, like Melissa, I really didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted to do. As I was, you know, ending high school, I thought maybe I wanted to become a teacher. But I started taking some running start classes at, you know, the local community college and decided that wasn't my thing. So I just kept taking classes at the community college, and actually a friend of the family offered me a customer service job at an EMS company. And I took that, and I fell in love with the industry and the pace of activities. You know, I loved seeing things be made and looking at, you know, helping a product, a customer, you know, get a physical object at the end of the day. I really enjoyed that. So I worked in customer service there for a little while, and then I transitioned out to the shop floor and was a production supervisor for a little while as well. And then I went back to school. I decided to try something different, and I went into human resources. And I did that at a wire and cable harness company for a few years as well. So just a lot of different positions, you know, over the early years of my career. But once my husband and I decided to start out of the box manufacturing, I'm really grateful that I, you know, spent some time in all of those different roles, because I think it gave me a great a broad base of experience to pull from, in starting our own company. So my husband is an engineer through and through. He's some people joke and say that he's the brains of the operation and I'm the heart of the operation. But it's true. He is all about the product and the process and the equipment. And I am much more about the people, and I think it's a good combination he and I have. And people always ask me, how do you work with your spouse? I could never work with my spouse. But I think the key is that, well, first we met at work, right? So we already had a working relationship, but then also I let him be good at what he's good at, and he lets me be good at what I'm good at. And at the end of the day, I think that's really important with any business relationship. If you're stepping on each other's toes and trying to counter decisions and opinions, it can get tough. But anyways, my husband and I started out of the box manufacturing in 2008. We were a garage startup, didn't do a whole lot of business for the first 3 or 4 years. And then slowly started adding customers. I got into our first very small facility in 2012. My husband quit his job and was running the business full time. And I was kind of part-time, helping out on nights and weekends for another couple of years, and finally quit my job in 2014. So since then, we've been running the business together. And it's been a blast. We're here in Renton, Western Washington. We've got about 65 employees at our EMS company.
That's wonderful. That's excellent. You both are definitely leaders in the industry, and I really appreciate you being on here. What would you recommend? Because I know you both are involved with young adults, and you're very much mentors to people in your work area and also in the schools in your area. What would you recommend to students that maybe aren't sure where they should go or how they should get started? Do you have any words of wisdom that you would recommend to them for starting out and maybe exploring the electronics world?
Melissa, you want to?
Sure. So I have heard a lot of people in the past talk about, well, I started this and I didn't really like it, so I'm going to change and do something else. And so I feel like they start on a path and then change and then off on a different one and so on. So my advice would be totally different. Like it or don't like it, as long as you absolutely don't hate it, start in an engineering degree. Anyone, start taking general classes. And most of the general or first, and second year curriculum are really applicable to any of the different engineering fields. So start taking some classes. You'll gain a little bit of exposure to maybe which particular discipline you might be interested in, but really and truly get the degree in whichever type of engineering you get your degree in isn't necessarily a stamp on what you're going to do the rest of your life. Because you can graduate. I have people that work for me that graduated in one form of engineering and work in something totally different, or don't even work in engineering, but work in sales. I think an engineering degree grants you such an opportunity, and really, I'm going to say also, and maybe I shouldn't, but an amount of respect. I mean, you walk in the room and people, especially females, and people are like, oh, wow, you must be really smart, and meanwhile you're thinking, okay, not really, but thank you. And so my advice is really just get that degree and then let your job later determine what you're going to do in life, because you may not want to work in engineering at all. You may want to work in a different, you might go to work in industrial, in a factory and decide, okay, the job that you liked was in HR or was in whatever. But once you're in that door and you've already got the starting salary that goes with an engineer's starting salary, which is in general higher than most other majors, you can move to whatever area you like. So just don't feel like you are stuck in that, in whatever you're doing and whatever classes you're taking in school doesn't define what you're going to do for your life. So that's one. I have a whole list, so I don't know how many, if you want
Keep
to
going
one at a time. Okay. So I would also say in my particular field in wire harnesses, don't
Yeah.
underestimate the value of being bilingual or multilingual or even somewhat bilingual. So, for me, having planted Mexico, I know some Spanish. I'm far from perfectly bilingual, but my Spanish has helped me tremendously. And I learned that in school. I had some Italian from my family history, but I never had, we didn't have Italian class at school, so I learned Spanish. And I think that's been, that's been great. But the people who work for me that are very bilingual, more so, way more than me, they have the top positions. They are the people that are going places and right, wrong, or indifferent, their ability to speak good English and good Spanish grants them those opportunities. Okay, so work ethic. I think a lot of older days, people really worked hard. I find that today, and I'm going to say kids, maybe not kids, people coming out of school, and I see a little bit of a different mentality. Some people have that, some people don't. So most engineering positions are salaried positions. So I don't want people who are working for me looking at the clock saying, oh, it's exactly 5 o'clock, I'm out of here. Because I will expect from my people that when I have a project that that needs done, please work on it for me. We're a great company. My managers are great managers. Get the job done. That you will be rewarded tremendously. You'll get time off. You will get to leave early when we're not busy. Nobody hassles you about where you are, what you're doing most of the time. But when you have a job to do, don't focus on clock watching. So those are some of the items. The other ones are keep in mind that companies, when they hire you, they spend a lot of money, thousands of dollars to train you. So try to make it work for at least a while. When I look at resumes, if I see that a person has switched jobs every 6 months, I won't even consider hiring them, because it costs me so much money to train someone, and they're of lesser value the first year or 2 years until they're really trained, where they can go out and be so impactful and have that knowledge and experience. But to get them to that point takes a lot. So again, I don't want to take the chance of hiring somebody who's just going to quit because down the road someone else is gonna offer them $1,000 more. Which brings me to my next point: is salary's big, but benefits and opportunity for advancement are even bigger. What is your opportunity to work with the decision makers? What is your, there's so many things to consider when you're taking a job. Don't let salary be the only category that you consider. Take the opportunity to enhance your education, especially if your company is going to provide you with opportunity for schooling, or to match, half and half, or just to pay it if you work in a certain field. I took advantage of that opportunity. My master's degree was entirely paid for by General Motors, and I probably honestly wouldn't have done it without that, but I continued to work there, and hopefully they found that they got all the payback in helping me with that degree. And I think the biggest thing is drive and desire. As people going into a workplace, I don't care if you are the smartest person. I don't care if you are the most qualified, have the most experience, any of that. If you are trainable, if I look at you and I see that you have the drive and desire, we will work with you. We will train you. We will help you. We will give you skills that you maybe aren't going to stay with at our company forever, but we'll give you marketable skills that at some point are going to be incredibly beneficial to you. So just show that drive and desire and that hard work ethic, and you will get so far in life, and it's and you will be rewarded. So there's my spiel, and sorry it was long.
No, it's excellent information. Thank you very, very much. Yes, that's
pleasure.
Wonderful. Allison, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts. I would say the biggest thing for me is to not underestimate the value of networking. There is still a little bit of who that will help you in your early career. So that is definitely my advice to meet people, go to the happy hour after work, go to trade shows, just really spend time getting to know people in the industry and your coworkers, because that's going to make a really big difference. And find a mentor, but also find an advocate and know the difference. Right? A mentor is someone that's going to help you with your educational and career goals. An advocate is a person that's sitting in the room that's going to say, oh, I know that Wendy would be really great on that project. Why don't we let her handle that? So a little bit different, right? And a male ally can be very helpful too. Maybe that is your advocate. So those are, and don't stop on the professional development, not just as far as technical education goes, but your soft skills too, your leadership skills. I've been in a leadership position for a long time, but I still take every opportunity to brush up on my leadership skills and take emotional intelligence classes. And even if it's just a webinar or, a day seminar or something like that, that the more you keep those skills front and center, the better.
Excellent. That's wonderful. Thank you. And very valuable information. Now, tell me a little bit about each one of your companies that you have, because you're in two different genres of electronics, wire harness, and then also you've talked about, Allison, before about like, hey, listen, what you're holding in your hand, this remote control, the remote for the TV, that's what we make. So Can you tell us a little bit about what you develop in your businesses and how they're used in day-to-day world? So we can, I think that sometimes our young electronic students don't realize that everything that we use in day-to-day world, whether it be a phone, whether it be a computer or earbuds, are in a day-to-day world, the cameras that we're on and how they're utilized. So I'd love to learn a little bit about each one of what you do if you can, of what you can discuss with your companies that you work with and what you make.
Sure. So, there's a lot of what we build that we can't talk about.
Right.
But general industries that we support are defense, aerospace, medical device, general, commercial, and then prototyping and quick turns. And I think prototyping and quick turns is something that's really, really fun, because although you may not know what that device is going to be, the challenge of getting that customer 10 pieces in 2 days is just really great, and all the stars have to align to make it happen. And most of the time they don't. So you've got to figure it out, right? You've got to figure out how to make it happen. And, a jig or a tool or some sort of creative resolution to figuring out how to get the customer what they need. Problem solving and creativity, I think, are two skills that are really underrated in manufacturing. And I think for me, that's part of the fun of it. It is nice to be able to get out to customers sometimes too, when they allow you to come out and see a finished product. One of the customers that we have makes really high-end espresso machines. So at one point I got to go out and see, we build these, it's one of our repeat customers, and we build several part numbers for them on a regular basis. But to be able to go out and see, the circuit board that we build is this big, but it's going into an espresso machine this big, right? So just all of these different sub-assemblies going in there and working together, that can be really fun.
That's great. Wonderful.
Okay, so a wire harness, I have a lot of people all the time, when I say I'm in the wire harness industry, no clue, and I had no clue. So I just brought a couple of little samples to show what I'm even talking about. So this particular sample is a small, I'm going to say a small wire harness. It has connectors and cable and little terminals that we put on that plug into these connectors. And then what would happen with this is this particular one would go into maybe a headlamp assembly of a vehicle, automotive. So we supply this to the automotive industry. And harnesses can range from 1 circuit to several hundred. So this one's just a little, it's all coiled up, so it's hard to see, but this is maybe something bigger, right? That might go into maybe a tractor. It has bigger connectors. It's covered in conduit, so you can't really see what's inside it. But if you were to look, it'd be a bunch of cables, same as that. But this is covered because it's going to be probably in the exterior of the vehicle, like under the hood, and so you don't want it to get any kind of corrosion, or you don't want it to get, all the water. This keeps the water out, that sort of thing. But so what we do is, I mean, you will have a person that will come over after you buy the cable, and then you put the terminals on, and there's a machine that does that if there's high enough volume. If there's not high enough volume, then you might have a person that stands at a press and hits a pedal and puts the terminal on, and then a person, so then that makes the wire, right? That'll have a terminal on one end and a terminal on the other end. Now you have this wire. So then a person goes and takes one wire like that and walks over to an assembly fixture, plugs it into a connector, routes the wire around the board, plugs it into another connector. And what you end up with when you're all done with all of those different processes, and it probably sounds a little easier than what's really happening out there, but fundamentally that's the basis of a wire harness. And what it'll do then, like I said, is it's going to power. So I build harnesses for the school bus industry. So that means I'm going to take some power from the battery somehow, and I'm going to route it through that bus or through the tractor or through, whatever a vehicle may be. And you're gonna get the radio, and you're gonna have lights, and you're gonna have the HVAC climate control. You'll be able to turn your heater on and have a heated seat and those sorts of things. I also do not just automotive and con ag and some military harnesses as well. But I also have one particular, I have one medical customer. I have another customer that does a lot of pool equipment, so pool heaters and things like that. So what's interesting for me is when I worked for General Motors, I was just involved in the automotive industry, and it was great and it was exciting, and I worked in different, after a while my part of the wiring portion of General Motors got divested, and so then we got to start working with other customers as well, not just GM, which I am a big advocate of GM. But so that was fun. And then so yeah, we're in all different products. So it's exciting because it's not the same thing all the time. And I think Allison shares that from what I'm understanding. And this is the first time I'm hearing about Allison's business. So it's very interesting for me to hear that her experience, I think, is very similar to mine, where it's always different customers, it's a different need. Some it's a very short term, we need it fast. Others it's well, we've got 5 years, so take your time, but when we need it, make sure it's right, and it's very exciting. I never would have thought that I'd be remotely interested in this kind of business, but I love it.
That's wonderful. What do you see as industry in the future, like near future, that's emerging or changing in the electronics industry? What do you think are some of the newer, I guess say items that are happening, or even types of business that you think is going to be emerging more? So.
Right. Boy, I'll tell you, ages ago, I heard all about multiplexing and how that was going to change everything, to put all of your, the wire harnesses were going to become less complex, and everything was going to be shared from a signal standpoint along the same bus and so on. But we keep finding that more and more content is added to vehicles. Right now, there's so many more things with all the different GPSs and so on. So content does keep, I guess, increasing, but the world is changing with the electric vehicle, right? I think so. The designs now are different, and what we're working on, a lot of higher voltage applications in some cases, and some not higher voltage, but just very different designs. But I haven't seen that as much in the again, the tractors, the medical, the pool, the transmission type industry. So far, those are still traditional cable, I guess, designs. So yeah, I, I don't see, besides going EV and some alternative energy, I don't really know, for wire harnesses in particular. I think we're always trying to save mass. So we're getting smaller and smaller cable all the time.
Mhm.
And that's difficult. That presents a challenge because, as a person who actually plugs, it's not an automated process, the manual process of making a wire harness. So it's, a lot of times we employ so many females because they have smaller hands and are able to plug the cables easier than most often the guys that have larger hands. So I think there are always those challenges, right? Going to smaller cables and that sort of thing.
I agree that miniaturization, is definitely something that's ongoing in industry. As far as, a PCBA and electronics manufacturing goes, I think that we'll see a lot of opportunity in the near term, meaning the next couple of years in space and environmental applications. Environmentally sound agriculture is probably something that I think we'll see more of. Washington State, there's the western side of Washington State is very tech heavy, but the eastern side of Washington State is hugely focused on agriculture. So that's an interesting combination. And there's just a lot of agri-tech happening as well. So those are things, industries that I think are interesting and will drive innovation in the future. I'm also really optimistic about a resurgence of American manufacturing and just in general. I think the recession and the chip and component availability issues over the last couple of years have really brought that global supply chain issue to the forefront of conversation. And I think especially for the defense industry, they've realized that so much of that supply chain is overseas now. It's affecting the defense industry in a different way. So I expect the federal government to continue to invest in reshoring portions of the supply chain. So I think that, is good for the US. I'm excited about what that looks like over the next couple of years.
How has the component shortage affected you both in your businesses?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's really fun doing quotes, I can tell you that. There's a million alternates, but then once it comes time to purchase, those alternates aren't available. So start over. And there's a lot of, jobs that, there's just a 32-week lead time on one component. And you got to do what you got to do. You got to wait it out. But the thing that I always say to people that, aren't in industry, like everyone's heard of the CHIPS Act, but semiconductors are not the only issue when it comes to electronics supply chain. There's a lot of parts on that BOM that are hard to find now, and PCBs, that's becoming more difficult too, because so much has been offshored. So there's certainly a heavy impact, but there has not, in my experience, been a reduction in demand. So while lead times are going out, there's still plenty of work.
Excellent.
So in the case of Jana Diversity Solutions, we had some benefits actually as a result of all the shortages and managing those shortages. So some of my customers had trouble with their current suppliers. So we were actually able to grow by, I'm going to say, somehow being able to navigate the post-COVID world. And by that, I mean, with people going to work and being able to be there to make parts, as well as the management of parts that we are out of. And most of the time, I mean, I agree with Allison. If you need a part, and there is, you can check all the different distributor sites and locations you want. Sometimes you'll get lucky and find them, but for the most part, you're going to end up waiting the manufacturer's lead time, and there's not a thing that you can do about it, even if you have a high profile customer. And so that's been interesting. But again, navigating that has helped us in a way to actually gain some business. So that's how it started out. But now, well, I'm going to say not now. Now, again, things I feel like they're getting a little bit better. But then there was a little bit of time while we were starting to see, while we're actually now we're struggling more than we anticipated. And luckily, we were still able to keep up with our customers' demands. And a lot of times that's also because they've been, I'm going to say they've been good to work with in terms of, if we can't get this particular, but we can get this, I mean, a lot of times if you think about a cable in a vehicle, right? A lot of times, maybe you're out of one red cable, but you have the same exact thing in orange. Well, it's not exactly what you want because it's the wrong color, and the wrong color might indicate that the wire is used for one function versus another. But bottom line, it's going to function that exact same way. So when you really are in a trick bag and need to get parts made, just buy the orange cable, and when you have a customer that's willing to work with you on that and say, yeah, absolutely, I need my parts, go for it. And then a lot of times you just develop a relationship where they know you're going to come up with solutions for them, and that they're going to be reasonable where they can be, and not always are they able to accept deviations, but it's been a challenge. And what I would say is it's taken a lot of energy, because same as Allison mentioned, now instead of just placing the order for components and getting those components and having the team that deals with the receiving and all of that, we're now involved with, okay, it's not coming in, so now we need to check all these other sites. And then by the time I go back to the customer and say, okay, it's going to cost $1,000 more to get this if you want it, otherwise we have to wait, then a lot of times that stock is gone at the distributor and you're not going to find it again. So then again, that's where the relationships come in, where your customer and like, okay, I'm going to go, here's the limb, that just give me the rope, tell me how much, and I won't hang myself, let me know how much you're willing, and I'll make the best decisions that I can to get you the parts that make sense, knowing that you've already left work and you don't want me calling you at whatever hour, but this is when, the stock is on the site right now. It's not going to be there tomorrow morning. So it's been interesting navigating the challenges, but it's, I mean, it's just cost a lot of additional manpower, which is cost truly to us.
Yes, I can see that. Definitely. What do you see for the future, the near future, for young adults, especially young women, in going into electronics? Do you feel that there's a lot more vast opportunities coming up for the women in electronics?
I do, and I've never wavered from believing from the time that I saw it coming out of school. I got the offer right away, and then even when I in my early career, I used to work with students that were coming in and kind of interviewing them, and I would talk to them all the way through today. Most often, people, especially females, but I think engineers in general, have so many opportunities. It's not one company that's interested. If you can communicate rather well, engineers aren't necessarily always known for that. So if you do happen to be a good communicator, and you don't walk into the interview with your phone and try and to have a text message, read a text message, I think you're going to have so many opportunities. And again, the quality of life is good because the job is exciting, and there's so many different areas you can take it in. But also the shucks, I lost my train of thought. The job is exciting. I just think that there's so much opportunity. And I know where it's going. Still, as much as we all hate to say that salary matters. And I continue to say that the salary and the job opportunity for a female in engineering is high. The salary is going to be higher than the average. And that's just fact. Yeah, thank you.
I would say, there's so much potential for growth in the industry in general. More and more connected devices means more and more electronics, right? So the electronics industry in general has a very long and prosperous future ahead of it. And I think that we've talked about women in non-traditional industries so much recently that it's really gotten a lot of traction, and there's a lot of employers that are making concerted efforts to have programs that look for, women and recognize them and give them special opportunities. And I think that that's great. So I am very optimistic about the prospects for women in electronics.
Thank you. Yes. Hey, Allison, you just did at Out of the Box Manufacturing, you hosted students for Manufacturing Day, didn't you?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, so National Manufacturing Day is the first Friday every October. And we have been holding events minus COVID years for the last several years. And it's always one of my favorite things to do. So last week on Thursday and Friday, over the span of 2 days, we hosted 6 different high schools locally and almost 100 students. And it's just so much fun to show them what we do and see certain people, you can just see them get excited about it. And I love witnessing that excitement happen. But we also invite, and we set up almost like a staging area that's almost like a trade show, right? So we're the contract manufacturer of assemblies. So I invite a fab house, so there's somebody there to talk about PCBs as well. And we invite in a manufacturer's rep so we can see all kinds of quirky components. And we invite a design house, so they can talk about, the design aspect of things. So, and then of course we pull out parts and tools and scrap boards and, scopes and all kinds of different things so that students can really kind of touch and feel. And then they go out on the tour and they can kind of see it in action. So I love it. I think it's great. We actually, Monday, I got a resume from one of the students that toured our facility, and I already made her an offer. So she's going to come, she's taking, robotics classes in high school. She's going to come work part-time, 3 days a week on the shop floor. And I think that's really important. If you have an opportunity to work in industry rather than, nothing against retail or fast food or whatever, but if you have an opportunity to work in industry when you're younger, I think that's really helpful to get an idea of what that looks and feels like.
Excellent. Wonderful. Now, Melissa, I know you write for the WAMA magazine, correct?
I do. Yes. So what I always try to just inform people and students that are considering collegiate disciplines is just really to talk about the different areas of engineering, because again, I don't know, maybe today they know so much more because there's more STEM exposure at a younger age, but I really had no idea. And again, I think if you have family and they are engineers, then you're exposed to it. But otherwise, if you're not, and a lot of times underrepresented groups are those that just, they're blue collar workers, and that's the experience that they have, and they don't know anybody who's an engineer that can tell them what the opportunity is. People just don't know. So what I do in that article series is just to pluck a female engineer working in a field that has something to do with wiring or components, electronics, and really just write an article on that person to say how did you get involved in engineering, and how were you exposed, and what kind of jobs have you had, what was your collegiate experience. And so then hopefully the readers, and again, wiring harnesses, the area of wire harnesses is so male dominated. When I go to the shows, I see oftentimes mostly men, and I laugh because sometimes the females that I see are the ones that are just staffed at the booth to bring the guys over, but they don't have anything to do with product, and they're just models and they just bring people to the booth and that's it. So, and not that they're that's fine. So what happens is, again, people don't realize, and so I write these articles just to show what are all the different areas that people are working in, and did they have a good time in school? Did they feel like they were not included because they were female? And in most cases, most of them, like I'd look back on in my time, and I didn't, whether I was a girl or a guy, didn't matter one bit to me. I mean,
Mhm.
in the workforce and
Mhm.
in school, I might have been outnumbered, but I was friendly. I still talked to everybody, did homework with the guys. It didn't matter for me. And so it's nice to get everybody else's opinion of what that is and what that experience looks like and what their, their job and their education and all of it looks like, so that other people reading can say, wow, okay, that I never knew I could do that with a degree, or with this degree I never knew that that was an area of working, but that sounds interesting, let me consider that. So that's really what it's about, just exposure, and hoping that the people who are reading the Wire Harness News are really sharing it with their nieces, their daughters, because again, they themselves, there aren't going to be a ton of students that are female that are considering engineering that are going to be on distribution of the newspaper. So I'm counting on the readership to share the message.
That's fantastic. Now, I know you both work with students. Melissa, you've told me in the past that you've worked with your high schools in the area, and then also, was it ASU that you've gone in and spoken with as well?
ASU, that was the plan, but it never actually, for
Okay.
whatever reason, maybe because of COVID, I think it was right around the time that COVID was happening, but definitely the schools, yes, again, because I have students that are involved in the local schools here, and I just make myself available, and it hasn't happened as much, recently, actually, not even since COVID happened. So hopefully I'll get back to doing that again soon, because I really enjoy that. But I take every opportunity. If I'm, I went last night coaching softball, and I have young girls there. And so of course I start talking to them about engineering. So it's just what I do. It's what I do. Very passionate.
That's excellent. And you know what? I commend both of you being so involved with the community that you're around. It's so important. It really is. We're having, and I hope to see you both there in Apex in San Diego. It'll be the last year that we're having it in San Diego for a few years. We're having a STEM event, which I've mentioned to you both, and we're actually having 535 high school students come this year. Yes.
Wow.
So we're really, really excited about it. So I'll definitely be talking to you both offline a little bit more about it. See if maybe you would like to come and visit, maybe even be speakers there as well.
It's not hard to get me to San Diego. It's a lovely city.
I know San Diego. I'm from Chicago, so San Diego in January is lovely. But it's such a neat experience to have the young students see and go on the floor and see this football size room of all these different components and robotics and pieces and parts, and how do parts get made, and like you said, how tiny they are. Some of these parts are as tiny as a speck of pepper in your that you shake onto your salad, and they do such great things. And then also with the wire harness, to see all these wires and how they're combined together to make something, and then seeing the visualization and the connection as to, oh, this makes what I drive, or this is, like you said, warms my seat, or it's like Allison, you said before, these parts that we do, guess what? It's what you use in your remote control for your TV, or what we use in our everyday life. So it's so important to keep reaching out to these students to let them know the theory, and then also understand what the theory is, but then also having that visualization as to how it is applied into real life and what they use in their day-to-day world. And then they can be a part of it, and that they can use their imagination and their creativity for that, and apply it to something that they could enjoy as a career for the rest of their life. So anyway, any other wise words of wisdoms you could pass on to our students that'll be listening today? And also, we're also going to be on a YouTube channel, so they'll be able to watch at a later date.
I think I feel like I've said most of the comments and advice, but I'm always available, and if you're interested in sharing the contact info, absolutely, I'm happy to impart any wisdom. My ideas aren't always mainstream. I don't always follow the the path that is the most popular. But I'm certainly willing to provide any guidance I can, or support in terms of, just the guidance and the little rah excitement. And I kind of give it to you straight. That's one area that I'm pretty strong as, is I feel like maybe because I was always an engineer that was in sales, I would just flat out tell the customer, I wish I could say we can do that, but we can't do that. And I'd probably have people telling me, what? Just say we can do it. But, it didn't work, because that's how I ended up developing them as, lifelong customers, or, because they realize I'm going to just tell them how it is, and not make it look all rosy and all of that. So I know I've talked a lot about the positives. I generally absolutely believe them. And I think it's everybody I talk to, really, I can't, and all the females that I've interviewed, I don't believe there's one that has said, I would not have made the same choice to go into engineering. So that's pretty exciting.
And Melissa, it's so true. People may not like what you have to say when you say no, but they'll respect you. Yes. Because you're giving they will respect you in the long run, and they trust you. You're building trust up. You're not delivering something that can't be done. And I think that's a lifelong lesson, that you may not like what you have to say, but they're always going to believe in you and trust you, because they know the next time when you say yes, you're going to mean it as well. Right.
Once you lose your credibility, not good.
Agreed. Not good. Agreed. And that's what makes you both successful women in the workplace, and with your businesses, is because you both are very highly intelligent. You both have, you're both very knowledgeable with your fields, and you're very honest with your customers. And that's so important in today's day.
And I would, also just mention too, if you do end up working for a company and you don't feel like they're treating you well, and again, nothing to do with financial, but just treating you well, then take note of that, because most, I would feel, I remember starting out and thinking, okay, I'm starting a company, I need to make sure that I'm here and I can't get too close because I'm so friendly. Sometimes I get too close, and I still end up getting too close. And I went to Europe last week, and who am I buying gifts for? The people who work for me. Because I feel like they're part of my extended family, and they do so much for me that I want to reciprocate in any way possible with whatever their needs are, whatever it is from a work standpoint, not necessarily just, a stupid gift or whatever, but things like that. I think people, it's okay to be kind, and kindness isn't weakness, and always be kind. And really, if you end up in a position of power, treat your people well, because they are your best asset. And they will be loyal to you if you treat them well. And you're always going to have some that aren't, and those ones end up gone from if they take advantage of that. Kindness is this old swordfish line, right? Don't mistake my kindness for weakness. But don't be afraid to be kind.
Agreed. Yes. Thank you both so much for joining us today. You've been wonderful. You've given wise words. I appreciate everything that you've said. And I will definitely be putting your information out. Gentry and I will both be putting your information out, and appreciate you reaching out and saying that you are able to speak with any of our students that are in any of our chapters. And also, we all are going to be expanding this to high school students eventually as well, so they'll be able to listen and hear your wise words for students also maybe considering going into the electronics world. So thank you very, very much, both of you, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.